an RFP to get that project underway. And as I talk about this, I'll probably say project a lot. When I say project, I mean this master plan effort, not the full trail effort. So just to clarify that. This, like I say, we kind of kicked it off and started developing the scope of work. This is kind of envisioned to be an agreement that we would enter into with state parks and EMNRD, whereby they would be the project managers working with the consultants, and we would collaborate with them on the funding side. And I also want to kind of start out by saying that all of this can be changed. You know, this is what we've come up with. This is something for the commission to consider. If you see things we've missed or things that you'd like to include, that sort of thing, and depending on the feedback we get from the folks in the audience. So I'll just give kind of a brief summary here. We kind of conceptualized it as being divided into two phases. The first phase would be the actual development of the master plan. The second phase is when it would get kind of down into the, the fine-grained detail a little bit and look at the alignments by region. So first I'll talk about the phase one of the process, and each phase kind of has a series of tasks associated with it. For phase one, the first task is existing conditions, opportunities, and constraints analysis. There's also development of vision and goals, and then finally the preliminary and final master plan. I'll just go ahead and kind of walk through this. In your document, you'll notice there's some information about project management, and these are details that came right out of the last commission meeting that were just items of feedback that we got that we thought these are things the consultant could assist state parks with in terms of managing the project. Things like, robust stakeholder outreach, what types of meetings and those sorts of details. So there's kind of a project management element in here that's separate from the two phases that I mentioned. So the first phase is the development of the Rio Grande Trail Master Plan, starting with existing conditions, opportunities and constraints analysis. This would have kind of two main parts to it. One aspect of the existing conditions analysis is a really robust GIS component, looking at all kinds of considerations along the trails and really just, an exercise in data collection, really, and geospatial data so that we can map things. And then there would also be a heavy narrative component to that as well that would get more into local economic development and just opportunities in that respect. Also, when we talk about the regions of this project, we've considered it to be the southern Rio Grande, the central Rio Grande, and the northern Rio Grande. These came right out of what was previously discussed, and really they kind of correspond to the amount of planning that's already happened up to this point. As Vice Chair Tafoya was telling us, they've already done a whole lot of effort already in this part of the state, in the southern part of the state, so we kind of wanted to respect that and include that as the southern part of the state. So that's from the Texas-Mexico border area, and it actually goes all the way north to Belen, and people might have a lot of different things to say about where these borders should start and stop, but it really corresponds to the level of effort that's already been undertaken. So that would be the southern Rio Grande. The central region then is mostly the Albuquerque and Santa Fe metro areas, again kind of corresponding to a lot of the trail planning and parks planning along the river in that area. And then the northern Rio Grande would be from Pilar up to the state border with Colorado, and that more or less corresponds to the amount of planning that's been done for the Rio Grande del Norte National Monument. Again, that would all kind of go into the narrative aspect of the scope of work, looking at socioeconomics, trail and facilities inventory, policy and governance, best practices, and funding opportunities. There would be 2 deliverables to come out of that task. One would be the existing conditions report in the map and narrative format. The other would be the opportunities and constraints analysis, also in map and narrative format. And these maps really, I think, are envisioned to be kind of a fundraising tool, really, that the commission can take around and show people what's envisioned and how they can get involved, and volunteering opportunities once the trail is being constructed, and those kinds of things. So it would be kind of I think, a real asset to the commission to have a tool like that to take around to meetings and that sort of thing. The second task in phase 1 is the development of the overarching vision and goals. This would basically be a concise expression of these vision and goals that everyone's talked about, and again, really relying on our consultants to develop that, reaching out to all the different stakeholder groups that we know exist for this project. And there would be 3 deliverables under that task. A wall size exhibit map, and this is kind of getting back to what we already talked about a little bit with the GIS data collection. A single page brochure and a social media plan. So I guess one thing that bears mentioning, a lot of the questions about social media and outreach and these sorts of things, I think, will really be addressed as this project gets underway and as the consultants begin bringing deliverables to the commission for consideration. So I think once this project gets up and going, the work groups will really have a lot more to chew on as far as their specialty and their specific focus. The third task under the first phase, the master plan development, is to develop the preliminary and final master plan. We've kind of envisioned that the consultant will bring a preliminary plan to the commission meeting for approval and feedback when the time comes, and we'll take all of that into account in developing the final master plan. So out of that task, there would be 4 deliverables that would be presented to the commission: the preliminary master plan, the final master plan, and a master plan summary map, and also presentation materials for the commission and for the different work groups and the agencies involved to take to the public and do presentations and that sort of thing. As I'm going through this, I asked the commission to let me know if you feel we've missed anything or you have additional questions or clarification. Because phase 2 is really the detailed planning and regional alignment phase, and that's kind of what State Parks really does a lot of already. So I'll kick this off, but State Parks may want to chime in or kind of lead in some form. But as I mentioned, there's these alignment studies would be conducted by region, and there's the north, central, and southern regions of the state that would be part of this project. The first task would be an alternative alignment analysis. Again, really looking at all the possibilities, taking into account all the diverse land ownership issues and things of that sort. And part of that would be then to come up with a segmented alternative alignment analysis by region, and then finally an identification of the preferred alignment based on robust outreach through that process. The second task is to identify the preferred alignment and the implementation plan. So based on the Rio Grande Trail Commission, or based on the review of alternative alignments, they'd prepare a final report on the preferred alignment and the plan for implementation. And not going into too much detail with all of these, I know that there were time considerations, so I can go into greater detail if anyone has specific questions. So then that final deliverable would be with the preferred alignment and implementation plan, maps and PDF and GIS shapefiles, as well as a narrative description of construction costs, funding sources, and phasing. and implementation steps to be followed. With that, I guess I'd stand for any additional questions, but this is really the starting point that we'd like to work from, and with the Commission's approval, we would go ahead and work with State Parks and EMNRD to get an RFP process underway to get this project going.
Well, thanks, Aaron, and I want to again acknowledge and thank Secretary Tom Church for identifying this funding source. This is extremely important because we have a very limited budget. I believe it's $75,000, and we would not be able to undertake this very important task, and we really need to have this management plan developed, and we really thank the Department of Transportation for stepping up. Senator Cisneros.
Mr. Chairman and Aaron, the only thing I wanted to add is in your mapping and that you consider looking at the LiDAR technology as part of the work plan, so that we can start focusing on bringing that in, both from the legislative standpoint, and I do believe that Secretary Church mentioned at one point that he was looking at appropriating some departmental funding for the LiDAR application anyway. So I think it's something that you may want to take a look at, and if you need, there's a gentleman by the name of Early Wright that works for Santa Fe County that may be able to assist you in terms of the local application of this technology. And that's all I needed to add. Other than that, I think it's a good document, Mr. Chairman. It certainly sets the stage for what needs to happen. Clearly, there's a lot of work ahead, but that's part of the game. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So from the New Mexico State Parks perspective, we are very excited to be working with the New Mexico Department of Transportation and really appreciate the funding and the staff time that they're willing to bring forward in making this happen. And so we're hopeful that we can push this request for proposals out, go through all of our wonderful steps that we undergo within the state system in order to actually get work going. And I think that this scope of work is very realistic in terms of kind of looking at the overarching plan, the overarching goals, starting to look at regional differences. I think that we have a lot to work from, as I mentioned earlier, here in the southern Rio Grande, and we're really excited to build from that, take a really good look at that. And in fact, Dr. David Certain in the back there, he actually has the old plan for the southern Rio Grande. So if you're interested in visiting with him or talking with him a little bit later, he can share some of that information with you as well. And then with the second phase, really getting it down to the nuts and bolts of where we constructing trail, where do we already have trail that we'll be designating as trail segments. But we really look forward to working with DOT, and we're happy to answer any questions with regard to that.
Other comments from the commissioners?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is the timing of all these deliverables, because I think the user group certainly would be wanting to interface and see what opportunities there are.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. I can speak to that a little bit. As far as a start point, I think it would just be sort of as soon as we could, with the Commission's approval, begin working on our interagency agreement to get things going so that the RFP could go out. And then to the specific question of the scheduling, as part of this RFP, anyone bidding would have to submit their own schedule and work program that would identify the key deadlines to bring things before the Commission to present on what they've done. And there's always going to be a feedback loop from the public, from the Commission to rework anything that needs reworking. So there's no specific deadlines yet. I would just say we're just hoping to get things started as soon as possible.
And if I understand our discussion from the last meeting, if we wanted to take advantage of FY16 money, we would need to get this RFP out probably in March. So timing is very critical. And you know, we can entertain any specific or general comments that you have at this time, but I may want to suggest that if there are things that you, as you go through, that you find you may want to address, that you do that by responding back to Aaron. One thing, for example, in my looking through it, I thought it was an excellent RFP. Just a few minor things like presentations at bi-monthly meetings. The commission does not have bi-monthly meetings. The legislation requires that we have at least 3 meetings a year. We've pretty much decided to have meetings quarterly, but we do not meet bi-monthly. And identifying some of the acronyms that may be in there, but overall, I thought it was a very well thought out document. So does anyone have any other things they want to point out at this time?
Mr. Chairman, first off, thank you so much, Commissioner Detter. Welcome, and thank you to Secretary Church again. I mean, this is a huge contribution to this effort and commitment, and all work that we need to get done. It's a very ambitious RFP and contract you have in mind. So hopefully we find qualified people who can get it done, and maybe, you know, encourage folks to even, you know, team up with other players who can collectively get it done. I know we've got a lot of different groups of users that are interested in here, constituents of mine that are here today representing horsemen, bike riders, et cetera, and perhaps it's in here somewhere, but I think for the RFP and the organization, it's going to be important to work with the different users.